You're here for English-speaking games and I've got 10 for you. Some are super simple but have plenty of mileage, while others require a little bit more explanation but are guaranteed successes. For the shorter ones I'll explain how they work in this video, but for the longer ones I've made or will make standalone videos that go into more detail. I'll link to those other videos when they come up and you can find them all in the description below. So let's get to it. Number 1 is What's Changed. A super simple game. You can play it with any age, ability or class size, but maybe not with advanced adults. It's a little bit too basic for them. And there's an online version that I'll explain shortly. Choose one student to be the identifier. If you have around 20 students, actually pick 2 identifiers. And if you have 30 students, pick 3. The identifiers take a few moments to look at the classroom, then go outside so they're unable to see in. Now everyone inside rearranges the classroom. Obviously students should be respectful with other people's property and be careful not to damage anything. But you could move tables and chairs, turn posters upside down, draw a picture on the board, anything that you think would be fun. In total, make about 8 to 10 changes per identifier. This is enough to challenge them, but not so much that it goes on forever. The identifier, or identifiers, come back in and they describe what has changed. Depending on their level, challenge them to use as much language as they can. A low-level student may just point at something and say the name of it, but someone more advanced might be able to use prepositions and the past tense and the present tense to compare. When the identifiers have found all of the changes, or you think they've had enough time, then turn everything back to normal and start again with a different identifier. If you're playing online, you'll need to do a little bit of prep. Get a shared document like on Google Slides that everybody can go in and edit. Add a bunch of pictures to the slide, bonus points if they're related to what you're studying in class at the moment. The identifier looks at the slide and then looks away, closes their eyes or turns off their screen or something like that. Then everybody else goes in and edits the pictures on the slide. So this could be turning them upside down, making them bigger or smaller, changing the colour. The identifier then looks at the screen and describes what's changed. Game number 2 is Similo. I love Similo because it provokes debate and discussion between players. It's a cooperative game that needs at least 3 players. You as the teacher can make up the numbers if needed. You shouldn't really play with more than 8 players, so if you have a larger group, split them up and have multiple games going at the same time. It's played with a deck of particular cards. One player chooses a secret card, then using the other cards has to give silent clues to help the others work out what the secret card is. The others have to interpret the clues and discuss which card they think is secret and which ones they can eliminate. I've made a whole video about how to play and how to get the best out of it in your classroom. Link up there and in the description below. In that video, I also explain how to make your own version to focus on specific vocabulary. And if you sign up to the Enchanted ESL monthly newsletter, you can get the food version that I made totally for free. Number 3 is Packed Pictures. Packed pictures are those crazy cartoon pictures that you get in Where's Wally books or on novelty jigsaws. They're packed full of different objects, animals, people doing crazy things, and just general chaos. They're a goldmine for vocabulary and they get students really engaged. You can play with any number of students, any age, any ability, online or in person. Go to Google Images and search crazy novelty jigsaw to get some great pictures. I've used scenes of Halloween, Christmas, on the beach, in the mountains, and many, many more. When playing in person, I print them off and put them inside one of these A4 dry erase pockets. That means students can draw on them, write on them, and you don't have to print out another one for a different class. I usually start by getting students to say out loud some fun things they see in the picture. Then I might play a mini game, for example getting a student or a small group of students to say something that they find of a certain colour. If other students can't find that thing, they should use their English to describe where it is, and that uses a lot of prepositions. Another mini game is for one student to say one tiny hidden thing that they can see in the picture, and the others have to find it. I've found packed pictures brilliant for practicing things like in the middle, on the left, at the top, etc. You can draw a grid and then label the different parts. Then get students to say something like, at the bottom, there's a squirrel taking a photo of a human. Choose a picture that's suited for the interests and abilities of your students. There'll be something out there for everyone. The 4th game is Would You Rather. You may already know this game from playing with friends and family. It's fantastic not only for debating hot topics, but also for forming questions. You don't need any materials whatsoever and you can play online or in person. If you have a large group, consider dividing them into smaller groups of 5 or 6 just so everybody has a chance to speak. Students take it in turns to ask a question that starts with Would you rather? The classic one is would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? They don't all have to be silly though. Would you rather have a fun job that doesn't pay very much, or a really boring job that gets you loads of money. Students may agree in their answers to some questions, but others might provoke quite intense discussion. This is fantastic, this is what you want. Students practice so many different skills when they're arguing their case. But of course, remember to keep things respectful, and be wary of group dynamics, as some students may tend to dominate the conversation and others might withdraw. Try to make sure everybody gets their chance to express their point of view. It may also be tempting to prepare questions in advance and give them to your students. I'd avoid this. Part of the game is coming up with good would-you-rather questions, and that's a whole skill in itself. If you think students might take too long thinking of questions when it's their turn, get them to prepare a few ideas beforehand. Game number 5 is say and draw. One student describes the scene, and the others have to draw it. It's as simple as that. It may be basic, but it's full of possibilities. All you need is for every student to have something to draw with. It's best for beginners and intermediates, although you could play it with more advanced students, you just have to make the descriptions more complicated. You can make it a very funny and silly activity where students use their imagination and they come up with lots of crazy drawings, or you can calm it down and make it a relaxing experience where students just listen and calmly draw. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do with say and draw, so check out my full video on it up there and in the description. At number 6, we have Memory Chain, another game which is super simple but highly effective. It is steered more towards vocabulary, but it gets students saying lots of words out loud. Again, it's best with beginners and intermediates. You can play in person or online with any age and any group size. Although if you have a big group, you might want to split them up into smaller groups just so everybody has a chance to contribute. The game is played in turns, so establish an order. Standing in a circle is a great idea. The first player says a starter phrase like, I went to the park and I saw a, and then they add something. A squirrel. The next player in turn repeats the phrase and then adds something extra. I went to the park and I saw a squirrel and a big oak tree. This continues. I went to a park and I saw a squirrel, a big oak tree, and a lady dancing the Macarena. Keep going like this until you run out of time or the list gets so long that you forget the order. You don't need to bring any materials, but I would recommend preparing a starter phrase that suits the kind of language you're learning at the moment. So for example, if you're studying animals, you could say, I went to the zoo and I saw a. A great way to keep this game engaging for everybody and create deeper learning is to use gestures for each of the items on the list. While a player is remembering what the next thing is on the list, the other players can do a gesture to show them. In this way, you get the whole class actively thinking about the word and using their locomotor system, and this improves recall. Some people will play this game with elimination. For example, if you get something wrong in the order, then you're out. I wouldn't do this. You don't want students to be sitting out because they'll get bored and they won't be practicing. Plus, if you make it a collaborative effort, everybody is invested in making the list really long, and it kind of turns into one big dance routine with all of the gestures. Number 7 is Psychiatrist. This is a classic in the ESL classroom. You can play online or offline with any age, any group size, any level, and you don't need any materials at all to play. Like what's changed earlier, you need to pick one or more students to go outside of the classroom. These are the psychiatrists. If you have less than 10 students, one psychiatrist is enough. 10 to 20, choose 2. 20 to 30 students, choose 3 psychiatrists. And if you have more than 30 students, then 4 psychiatrists. While the psychiatrists are out of the room, the other students should decide on what condition they have. For example, they all think they're on the moon, or they all think they're robots, or every time they speak they have to touch their nose. The kind of thing you choose should be appropriate for the maturity and the ability level of your students. And avoid things that might upset students. Real psychological conditions aren't fun, so keep it light. Now the psychiatrists come back into the room. It's their job to find out what the condition is by asking questions to the patients. Patients should be helpful with their answers, not trying to hide anything, but also not trying to give away too much information and make it too easy. For example, if a patient who thinks they're a robot gets asked, "What did you eat today?" they could say, "I didn't eat anything. I don't need to eat." Sometimes the game finishes quite quickly as the psychiatrist guessed the condition pretty early, but other times the psychiatrists just don't stand a chance because it's too difficult. Over time, you and your students will get used to the kind of thing that's an appropriate challenge. If you pick a good condition, it will take about 5 to 10 minutes to work it out, and it practices loads of different skills. Our 8th game is Say Anything. Say Anything works perfectly with intermediate students and is great with advanced learners too. Essentially, one person poses a question like, worst place to sleep. The others write a really good answer and will have some time to explain what they put. Then the questioner secretly writes down what they think is the best answer. Now the other players guess which answer they think the questioner chose. Points if they guess right, and points for the person who wrote the answer that was chosen. It works really well because everybody gets a chance to speak, and even if you don't come up with a good answer, you can still get points by betting on the best one. Up Up there and in the description once again is my full video on how to play, how to get the best out of it in your classroom, and access to some really good question prompts. Number 9 is Guess Who. Guess Who is one of the most famous board games out there, and you can play really easily with an image online which you can print out and put in one of these A4 dry erase pockets. It's great for asking and answering questions and is suitable for beginners and intermediates. You can even use different types of images instead of people, for example sports, food, animals, modes of transport, anything you want really. But my favourite way of playing is called Subjective Guess Who. This is inspired by an episode of House Rules on the brilliant No Rolls Barred board game channel. They play Guess Who with people, but instead of physical descriptions, you have to ask about personality traits. So rather than does your person have brown hair, you could ask does your person like video games? Or does your person have a lot of pets? This is great with more mature and advanced learners. Of course, being subjective, players may disagree on the personality traits, and you could end up with neither player getting the right answer. But that doesn't really matter. It's all about having fun and asking and answering questions. And when you are on the same wavelength and your answers correspond, it feels really good and is really fun. Finally, at number 10 is Spyfall. It's a social deduction game and maybe the best speaking game out there. You need at least 4 players, that could include you, the teacher, and a maximum of 8. So if you've got a big class, again, divide them up into smaller groups. And I'd avoid this game with beginners and young children. It's going to be too much for them to think about. In the game, everyone is in the same place. They each get a card that tells them their location. Well, everyone except for the spy. This person has a card that says spy on, and it's their job to find out the location that everybody is in. Everybody else has to catch the spy. They do this by asking and answering questions without revealing too much of the information so the spy can't work out where they are. Students really have to consider what they say in their answers and also construct their questions carefully. It's been an absolute hit in all my classes, and it deserves its own video. Yep, you know how it works by now, up there and in the description. So that's it, 10 brilliant speaking games. And if you want more, make sure to sign up to the Enchanted ESL monthly newsletter. Straight away you can get access to my free ebook of 20 EFL/ESL games, as well as loads of other helpful resources, activities, lesson plans and role plays. Every month I'll send you new goodies and it's all completely free. So head over to enchantedesl.com/sign up, pop in your email and you'll get access to it all straight away. But for now, I've been Will from Enchanted ESL, wishing you all the joy and success in your teaching. See ya!